Hey, it's been a few weeks since my last video. I've been fairly preoccupied with work. But in the meantime, Games Workshop went and released several new sets of miniatures for Legions Imperialis. And so today we're going to take a look at the Spartan Assault Tanks. Now this is an interesting kit for me because I actually own a full-sized Spartan Assault Tank and I'm pretty interested to see how do they compare. So this kit has 4 Spartan Assault Tanks in it. And for weaponry, much like the full-size kit, we get options for Spartan-mounted quad las cannons or for laser destroyers, as well as having hull-mounted heavy bolters or las cannons. So let's open it up and have a look. So we have 2 sprues, which seems to be a pretty common theme with these Legions Imperialis kits. We also have our instruction book and another vehicle transfer sheet for the Legion Astartes. And so taking a look at the sprue, you can see that we've got 2 Spartan Assault Tanks per sprue. And the detail level here is fantastic. You can see this is definitely rivaling the full-size Spartan Assault Tank in terms of detail. You can have a look at both sides. And so you can see we've got our sponson-mounted weapons around the side. So we've got some quad las cannons as well as our laser destroyers. And so I'm not sure if we get the option of equipping either on all of them or if there's enough to make one of each. We'll have to figure that out as we go. And we've also got our hull-mounted las cannons and heavy bolters. And then we also have some options for pintle-mounted weaponry as well. Excellent, well I'm pretty keen to get started, so let's start cutting this up and assembling it. Okay, so now we've finished assembly of all of the Spartan Assault Tanks, and that's for both of the sprues. So I've got 4 Spartan Assault Tanks here, and as you can see, I've assembled 2 with the sponson-mounted laser destroyers and hull-mounted las cannons, and 2 of them with the sponson-mounted las cannon arrays and the hull-mounted las cannons, because I like las cannons. Also, these 2, I've also equipped them with the pintle-mounted multi-melters. In terms of detail, these are absolutely fantastic. They're pretty similar to what you'd see on a full-size Spartan Assault Tank. They've managed to cram a lot of detail in here, even from the tiny little rivets through to the vents and the detailing on all of the hull. They're going to look great on the tabletop. In terms of size, they're pretty similar to a Kratos battle tank, so if you compare it here, they're roughly the same length, in fact pretty much exactly the same length. And in terms of height, the body on the Spartan Assault Tank is slightly bulkier, but when you include the actual turret and the person in the turret, they end up being a pretty similar height as well at their peak. Now we need to go and get these painted up. I've been painting my Legion Astartes as Sons of Horus. So we're going to paint these up in the same color scheme as for the tank and the troops here. So we need to go and get these primed through the airbrush. We'll lay down a base coat and then we'll move on to painting up the highlights on them. We start by priming the tanks. I'll go into a bit more detail later, but we're using a new primer for these, which is Vallejo's Grey Mecha Primer. Afterwards, we base coat the minis using Hydra Green. We then go and do a highlight from the top and along the bottom of the side panels using ghoul green. I find this creates a really nice rich green colour for the Sons of Horus. Next, we move on to base coating the black areas, which are the assault ramp and a diagonal section on the front and the back of the side panels of the Mini. Now that we've base coated the black and the green areas of the Mini, we'll start highlighting these areas before we move on to painting some metallics. We're going to start by edge highlighting along the tops of the side panels using ghoul green. Ghoul green is the same colour that we used through the airbrush to highlight the top and the side panels of the tank. To highlight the black areas, we're going to be using Dungeonstone Grey, and we're going to be focusing on the areas at the front and at the back of the miniature, as well as the ramp at the front. And so we're going to be highlighting the edges like we did with the ghoul green, highlighting using the side of the brush. Now to start painting the metallic areas. So we're going to start by painting up these tracks using the black metallic paint from Vallejo's Air Metal range. I find that this colour makes for such a nice, dark, shiny metal, which is a great fit for tank tracks. Just don't forget when painting the tank tracks to also catch the sides with the metallic paint as well. We're also going to paint the front boarding ramp with the same metallic paint. Now we're going to paint up the rest of the metallic details like the weapons. We'll be using gunmetal grey to paint these hatches on the top, as well as most of the guns, both the hull mounted weapons as well as the sponson mounted weapons. We'll also come back soon and detail some of these areas using a copper paint for areas that look like heat sinks. We'll also be painting the vents at the back and the exhausts at the back. Now it looks like I've missed the back area with the green paint through the airbrush, so I'll need to come and fix this up later. Okay, now we're going to paint over the heatsink areas of the weapons using the copper colour from the Vallejo Air Metal range. We're going to give these areas a real quick coat, and then we'll go over them with some Nuln oil to help improve the definition.
Okay, now that we've got the metals down, we're just going to use some black to paint the casing of the guns. So for the las cannons, that means painting up both the front barrels black and also painting the casing at the back black. We'll paint the pintle mounted weapon black, and then for the las destroyers, we're going to be painting the casing around here black as well as this bit.
Time to start using some Nuln oil. We're going to be using Nuln oil pretty much anywhere that we've used a metallic paint on this tank. So that means painting up the tank tracks, the weapons, and other areas like the vents, the hatch, and the exhaust. This really helps to add some grime and to increase the contrast in areas like the coils of the weapons. And the final detail is to add some decals. We're going to be applying 3 decals to each of these tanks, all Sons of Horus emblems. The first will be a white Sons of Horus symbol on the front ramp of the tank, followed by 2 black Sons of Horus symbols on each of the side doors of the tank.
Okay, all finished painting up my Spartan Assault Tanks. I can't wait to see how these go on the tabletop. I think Games Workshop did a really good job of translating the full-size Spartan Assault Tanks down into epic scale. These pack in so much detail and they were a load of fun to paint. While painting these up, I've also tried a couple of new things which I think I was actually quite happy with the results of. The first was that I tried using a new primer. I was using the Vallejo Mecha primer instead of Vallejo's normal airbrush primer, as apparently it helps the paint to stick a lot better. And I've definitely seen that in practice. I used to have paint always rubbing off on the edges or the corners of the minis, but with these ones, that has not been a problem. So I'm definitely going to keep using that in the future. Another thing that I've tried is I've tried starting to do some weathering. In particular, on these tracks for this particular tank, I used some rust paint that came with the 2 thin coats range. I'm reasonably happy with the result, though I think I'm going to try and experiment a little bit further and sort of land on something that I'm happy with. But overall, it was a lot of fun to try out. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in my next video.